Welcome to Discover Barnstable, the official podcast of the Town of Barnstable, a podcast where you can meet the people who steward the programs and services for the Town of Barnstable that connects us to our quality of life. We invite you to join the conversation as we navigate municipal government and our community pathways to help you discover Barnstable. I'm Liz Hartsgrove, and today I am joined with guest Town Clerk Ann Quirk and Communications Director Lynne Poyant as we dive into this week's topic of discussion, Barnstable Town Government. So Ann's been on our episodes on our show for a couple of times. This is her third appearance before us, but prior to Ann's discovering her passion for municipal public service as town government, or town clerk, being an elected position of town clerk since 2013 here in Barnstable, she has earned an associate's degree from Fisher College and has already had a full career with a telephone company. Lynne graduated from Quinnipiac University with a business and administration major and a minor in marketing with a concentration in public relations. She also has a master's in public administration from Suffolk University. In 2007, Lynne received the coveted Mercy Otis Warren Cape Cod Woman of the Year Award, something that's very near and dear to all of our female hearts here. And Lynne joined the Town of Barnstable in 2005 as the Director of Community Services and then broadened into the Director of Communications in 2020. Lynne, you're on the other side. Welcome. Welcome as a guest, and welcome back, Ann.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. This is really an interesting conversation because Barnstable, maybe I'll let you guys take care of this. Go for it.
So Barnstable is the second oldest town on the Cape, second only to Sandwich, which we were both founded in 1639. So we have a tremendous history. In 2014, we celebrated our 375th anniversary of the town, and there's been a lot of changes over those 375 plus years that we've had. And one of the things that we really wanted to talk about was that we are the Town of Barnstable, but we operate as a city form of government, and that confuses a lot of people. But before we go there, Barnstable is a county, it's a town, and it's a village. Yeah. And there's a lot of confusion throughout the Cape and off Cape with regards to the word Barnstable. So Ann, I'm sure, can provide some examples of how this confusion affects her daily life.
It does. It does. Very often I receive emails from people who think they're talking to Barnstable County when they're talking to the Barnstable Town of. There are many people, and you'll find them all throughout Barnstable, that think that because they live in Centerville or Osterville or Marston's Mills, that those are towns.
Yeah.
And they're not towns. We're one town with 7 villages. It also extends through to the post offices. You can't just put the right zip code and Barnstable on the envelope. It won't get there. If it's for Hyannis, it has to state Hyannis, Mass, and 02601. Or your mail is not going to be delivered. It's just that tricky here in the town of Barnstable.
That's a good way to put it, Ann, is that it's very tricky, and it can be confusing. Even even people in the Commonwealth get it. They're very confused even about, are we talking to the town, or is it a county, or I want to talk to the town of Hyannis. It's like, no. And I've just even seen that most recently on Facebook today, even, where there's national news or an article or something has been posted, and they list the town of Centerville, and it's like, No, that's not right. And makes employees not cringe, but just want to correct and make sure that we keep everybody getting the right information so that it helps them and they can be the stewards of that information to the next person.
So we've had issues during election seasons with the Secretary of State's website because there's a thing where you can find which precinct you vote in. And do you want to talk about the issues that brings up?
Do you want me to cry now?
Well, this is a good thing. We're talking about so we can inform people.
Yeah.
That's
Yes. If you live in the village of Barnstable and you're actually in the sub-village of Comaquid, because we don't just have villages, we have sub-villages,
of course,
too.
if we can't make this more confusing, let's add a whole nother layer to it. Yes.
Correct. So if you live in the Comaquid area of Barnstable Village, you use a different zip code than the rest of Barnstable Village.
Right.
So on the Secretary of State's website, if people put in their name and their zip code, it doesn't understand because it doesn't equate Comaquid with Barnstable. You're really a part of the town of Barnstable.
Yeah.
And this is a huge issue for a lot of folks.
But I think that comes, though, in most of it stems from the fact that this town is so old.
Mm-hmm.
And that there was so much space in between people at times that's how this all generated. And, Sandwich is one community that has multiple villages and stuff. But also Yarmouth is a 1639 incorporation as well, and they cross over with Comaquid. So there is these interdepartment, and the same thing with Sandy Neck has this interdepartmental or municipal relationship because all three communities were pretty much incorporated and established within less than a 1 year span. So that's pretty much the history lesson of why it is that we're, a little funky here.
And when you talk about how old we are, so for years we were a town meeting form of government, which is what the other towns on the Cape are. They are a town meeting form of government. They have a board of selectmen, and they also have a town administrator. And in 1989, the town of Barnstable voted to change the form of government to a city form of government, which is the town council, town manager form of government. And so our town council, we don't have town meetings, and Ann frequently gets phone calls from people saying, when is your town meeting? And we have a town meeting every time the town council meets.
Correct.
So twice a month, with the exception of July and August, our town meetings take place with our town council, who are elected to represent the 13 precincts that we have within the town. And the town council hires a town manager to run the day-to-day operations of the municipal government.
That is correct. Good job. You got it all right.
Thank you.
But Ann, how does actually your support to the town council is a little different, because you also are an elected position, but I see you at those town council meetings. So can you talk a little bit about that support system that you offer and vice versa?
The town council can directly talk to me. They can come to me at any time via email, on the phone, come in person, and help me, ask me to help them. It's not a problem, not an issue. It's part of what I do. I am a clerk for the council for meetings only, but because we have that relationship as being elected, we're all elected, they can just come to me at any time, whereas normally in any other department in the town, they go through the town manager.
Correct.
So that's one of the big changes, or one of the big differences that we have.
But how does so there are 13 counselors that are representing the 45,000 year-round people, right? We're at
Actually, that
45
number
went
went
up
up
since COVID,
Since the
actually.
2020 census.
Census. So what are we at now for population,
48,916 residents,
to be exact?
to be exact. And
Yeah.
that has to be taken into consideration whenever they do the census. The federal census is done door to door, except during COVID, when they couldn't do door to door, or they
Right.
tried, but they really couldn't do it as well as it has been done 10 years previous. It is the most accurate figures that we get normally because it is door to door.
Correct.
So we really know we're counting everyone, and which is really, really important. And I just had someone question me on this just before I came down here. Well, how do I know what the changes are within my own precinct, and what kind of numbers? Well, the key with the federal government is that you keep each precinct under 4,000 residents. Once you have precincts that are going over 4,000, now you have to put in another precinct. So that's the basis that they use. So every 10 years, our lines change a little bit because of population growing in one precinct and maybe not in another. Well, now we have to shift the lines of the precincts so that no one is more than, so everyone is under 4,000
So
residents.
the number of precincts that are represented on the dais at town council is dependent upon the federal census that is done every 10 years. And if that shifts or expands, so what happened, did anything happen from this last census because we just increased a great deal of number of people?
Over 3,000, yes.
Right, so did anything happen from that?
Yes, it changed many of our precinct lines. So everything has to be adjusted. When you move one precinct line, then you're looking at maybe two others that have to be adjusted. So it was a huge effort, and we did get it done. And we're still waiting for the Secretary of State's office to update the information through the voter registration information system. But we know where the lines are now, and we will be sending out postcards to all those folks whose precinct changed once the Secretary of State's office sends us the information.
That's incredible. That's a lot to coordinate. And
And had to go before the town council to get them to approve the change in the map.
So-
So there's a new precinct map based upon the census numbers that came out.
so their districts actually shifted around, and maybe some of their constituents aren't the same, so it shifts over to a different representative, and that's a whole different kettle of fish right there for some people. Yeah,
Not
because
only that-
for the established relationships that maybe somebody had for the last 9 years of a counselor and sitting for, because I think council has 12 years that
Yes.
they can sit, and it's every 4 years that they run.
It is every 4 years that they run, except
Except?
that in the year following, it winds up being 3 years following a census, because they have to do the proving out of the numbers and everything else. For us, the town council, and especially when there's changes, as there are this time around, all town council members, because we have odd and even precincts. And so 1 year is the odd, 1 year is the even. In 2023, all 13 precincts will be up for reelection.
Oh, so, wow. So you're going to have every single precinct, every single election site
Yes.
open. It's going to be as intense as pretty much like a federal election
Yes.
for just town purposes. And is that something that you do in partnership with maybe a federal election, or is it held at a separate time that places separate demands on you and your staff?
Every odd year, there will be a municipal election. Every even numbered year, there'll be a federal or state election. So we normally have, in November, the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November will be, in an odd number year, will be our municipal election. The difference in 2023 is it's going to be all 13 seats. Some of them will be running for 2 years, and some will be running for 4 years. So, yeah, it's complicated.
But it's very unique to Barnstable, because that is not the way that other towns on the Cape, or even in the Commonwealth, the majority of the towns in the Commonwealth do not operate that way. So the other 14 communities on the Cape are town, as Lynn said, town meeting and Board of Selectmen representation. So it's not done by precincts, it's done community-wide.
At large,
At
yes.
large, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and I think that one of the things that, the federal census is so important because it's all about funding that comes to a community. It helps with our schools and our infrastructure and all those kinds of things. But there's another little census.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. What's the difference in the importance of because I get it in the mail, and I look at it, and I'm like, don't they already know? I have 2 kids, I have a husband, and I have Camden, my dog, who should be labeled as a kid because he's really the size of a child, or an adult, actually. So why is it important to do the annual census from the town of Barnstable?
It is so, so important. There are so many reasons why, and I'm going to just tick off a few of them for you.
Please do.
We need to know how many children are going to be coming into the school system. Now, just because you did the federal census, I don't see that. I don't see that information. I see it as an aggregate or a large picture view of our town. Mm-hmm. I don't see it down to the individual. So I need to know, so I can notify the school committee, this is the amount of children that we think are going to be in the school system next year. And that's part of my job to give them that information. We take the information from any child from 3 to 21, and we make sure we pass that along so they have enough time to figure out, well, are we going to need more space in this school, or what are we looking at for elementary schools? It's a really important thing. That's number one.
Okay.
The other thing is, we have many, many young people who choose to go into the military. Once they've gone into the military, and if they are stationed overseas, they can get a welcome back $1,000 from the state of Massachusetts. They have to prove that they lived here. It's on the census. And we can go back and find them and give them the opportunity to finish filling out a form that we fill out our part to help them get that $1,000 bonus. We get calls sometimes from colleges to make sure that the candidate that has come before them to go to that school actually is a resident of that town, because they base on
another proof of residency.
Right, and how much money can we give them or not give them, and that's all a part of it.
But it's just solely your department and your operation just solely does Barnstable Town.
Correct.
Not the county, but the town, and that includes Barnstable Village, because Barnstable Village is part of the town of Barnstable, correct? Okay. All right, I think we're seeing the light here and getting the pieces all lined up. But does that information, that's a lot of information, so how many households actually, do you know offhand how many households that includes?
I believe we mailed to 22,000 households this past January for our census.
Wow, that's a lot. And they're mailed.
They're mailed, and then they come back, and the information has to be updated into their system, because is it in the VRIS?
Yeah.
It's in the voter registration information system. So voting is another part of what the census is for.
Yeah, and does that information obviously gets sent somehow to the state in some capacity for them to use in how even state dollars possibly?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely for state dollars. Also, this year there was a change in representation from our reps, our House of Representatives.
Correct.
Okay, so what happened was, it used to be that they had to have 42,000 people or residents to have an area for that representation. Okay. They changed it this past year, and now they're up to 44,000. So it moved, again, more lines
Yeah.
on the Cape to, for instance, Timothy Whalen was our representative, or he still is at the moment until everything clears out. But he is still our Precinct 1 representative, which is Barnstable Village. The rest of the Barnstable was under two other representatives, Kip Diggs and Steve Zaharos.
Yeah.
Well, that meant that at every election, for state or federal, I had to have 3 different ballots, because the representation is done, that is a vote every 2 years.
Yeah.
So now, for this year, it'll be the first time we'll only have 2 ballot faces, because Kip Diggs picked up 1, Precinct 1, and Steve Zaharos picked up Precinct 10.
Okay.
So he has 10, 11, and 12.
That's just another layer of representation that is represented in the town of Barnstable, that you have that state level of representation. Then we talked about the town council form of government, but then there's also appointed positions that the council oversees that is part of actually the workings of our town government. For example, regulatory boards and committees, right? Those meeting minutes get posted through your office, right? And that is an integral part of the workings and day-to-day operations of the community in making just not policy decisions, because that's on the town council form level, but that is a way that people can get involved in the decision-making, whether it is a Board of Health decision, whether it be licensing or zoning or any of that, right, Lynn?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the town council has an appointments committee, so if people want to become active with one of the boards, committees, or commissions, and they have different capacities. Some are regulatory, as you mentioned, some are advisory, but they need to apply to the town council.
Correct.
And express which board, committee, or commission they're interested in. The town of Barnstable has over 40, and so there's a lot that they can, provide some input into.
Yeah.
But it is a process, and the town council, you fill out the application, you're invited to an interview with the appointments committee, and then they will make a recommendation. It requires 2 reads of the town council to accept somebody to serve on a board, committee, or commission.
Yeah. But that's really important, I think, to just capture the fact that there's just all of these different methods of participation and people really being actively engaged in their community and working towards the future of it, whether it be an elected position, an appointed, but that's all how our town government is created and working and keeping our quality of life at a level that is, determined by the community as, either acceptable or just wonderful. So
one of the things that the town of Barnstable started in 2003 was Inside Barnstable Town Government, and that is a citizen academy. It runs for 13 weeks. With COVID, we've been on a bit of a hiatus, but the hope is that we may be able to bring it back in the fall. And it was 2 school teachers that set it up initially, Sue French and Meg Loughran. And I have to say that Sue and Meg have been highly sought after by a number of other communities looking to replicate what it is. I mean, the town is big. We have a lot of departments. There's an opportunity to meet people who are doing the work. So to have our finance director, Mark Milne, come and present about the budgets and how finance operates. We talk about our fire districts, the fact that we have 5 separate fire districts that are really They don't fall under the town the way they do in other communities,
Right.
but there's an opportunity for them to learn about the fire districts. In the town of Barnstable, we have 7 libraries. There's 7 not-for-profit agencies, and so they are, part of the town providing a service.
Yeah.
So there's an opportunity, we've got the airport, the Cape Cod Gateway Airport, which is an enterprise
Yeah.
fund. And there's an opportunity to go to the airport and to actually drive around and see all that it has to offer. So people learn a lot by participating inside Barnstable Town Government. The town manager and the town council president, I think, are part of the first
They are, yeah.
session. And so what's been interesting is there are a number of town councilors currently serving
Yes.
who actually participated in the Inside Barnstable Town Government class
Yep.
and decided that they wanted to get more involved and then ran
It
for
sparked a
town
new
council.
passion for
Yeah.
them. I agree, Lynn. I think that that program, because it's intimate, it's a small capacity, so it's limited in space. I think it's 30
yeah.
individuals. So, and it's once a week for 9 or
13 weeks.
13. So, because
And-
13 precincts, 13 weeks.
And it includes a tour on a Saturday from 9 to 12 of the 7 villages of Barnstable.
Yeah. It's really the back end, and you get like I said, it's an intimate moment where you can be having an opportunity to see the facilities that you may not be familiar with, to see people that are really doing the work every day to, make these policies and come to fruition in life and bring it to, and keep it stable. And then having an opportunity to talk to those people and pick their brains and ask them questions, and
Anne has fun on her night.
I do. I have a great time.
So what do you talk about, Anne, real quick?
Oh, I try to give an overview of the town clerk's office and the stuff that comes through the office and what we do every day, and it always prompts questions.
It certainly does.
I love it.
Yeah,
It's
it sparks that
great.
curiosity. And as Lynn said, it gets people more involved, it gets them more engaged, and it gets them more invested in saying, I want to be part of this. I want to be either an elected official or on an appointed board or even an employee. I've had a number of employees that are seasonals. They've started out as seasonals and have become year-round and permanent employees based upon the fact that their experience through that program was phenomenal, and it just made them aware of something that they didn't know existed inside of them. So
It's funny because I was part of that first class, and it was in 2003 when I was actually the executive director for the Hyannis Area Chamber of Commerce, now the Greater Hyannis Chamber of Commerce. But I wouldn't have known that 2 years later I would be working for the town.
So that actually goes right into my question to both of you, is that you both had experiences outside of municipal government prior to being in the public sector service. So how has it helped you with your skills in navigating through being an employee and being a public servant? And I'm going to start with Anne, because I know the telephone company, you and I have had a lot of discussions on this, especially around customer service, but I'm not going to lead you into that. I want to know specifically what kinds of skill sets did you learn in the private sector and bringing it over to the town?
I believe that the customer service end of it was probably the best thing that I got out of public service. Working in a public company,
Yeah.
than coming over here, because you, for instance, if you put a smile on your face when you answer the phone, you can't sound like, oh, I really don't want to talk to you. Right?
Oh, yeah, people can hear it.
You can hear it in the voice.
The genuineness of it, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, that's just one little thing, and it's. I had a lot of people. I was fortunate enough to get into management, and so I had a lot of people working for me, and you really kind of need that also when
Yeah.
you come into the public service end of things, because you never know what you're going to have or be or where you're going to end up. And I didn't wake up one day and say, "Oh, I want to be the town clerk." It's something that I worked into over a course of years, and I love my job.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And Lynn, nonprofit sector, really, for at least.
Well, I was at Highline Cruises prior to going to the chamber,
Yeah.
and it's funny because when I started at Highline, I had been a ticket agent, then a marketing representative, then the assistant director of marketing, then the ticket office assistant director of marketing, and the town ticket office manager, and then moved over to the chamber. And customer service was definitely something that was always paramount. It was, Highline is a family-run business, and how employees represent themselves reflects on the family. And, one of the big things that I learned is that we don't call them tourists.
Mm-hmm.
We call them visitors, because when you think of someone that's a tourist, you think of somebody that's imposing or you don't want them there. There was always, because growing up here, it was always, when it was tourist season, it was always a negative, you know? But if you consider them to be visitors, you're welcoming them here. And you have to think that you're driving around in dollar signs when all these people, they're spending their hard-earned money
That's for sure.
to come and visit what we know is a beautiful and wonderful place to be.
Yeah.
So I think that is one of the things that I learned in my previous life that I brought here.
Yeah, I think that's really important, actually, showing that, you don't have to have a degree in public management or public administration or any of that, political science or anything. It really takes a lot of different people and different experiences to form a team that is serving just as equally a dynamic community. And I think that's really important, having those different, just a variety of experience and talents that you can pull from to make your services even better. I think that's wonderful. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you for joining us, Ann, again, and thank you, Lynn, for sitting on the other side of the table today and joining me to talk about town government and doing a little Cliff Notes version of what it is and how we're different. And we already know that Barnstable's unique, but the actual creation of the form of government, establishes that uniqueness of us and why we stand out above all the rest. So thank you, Ann, and thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you, listeners, and join us next week when we invite West Barnstable Fire Chief Joe Maruca to talk about fire districts, what qualifies or creates a district, but more specifically, what makes West Barnstable Fire District so unique. Talk about uniqueness. West Barnstable is different than the rest of the other 4 districts that are in the town of Barnstable. But thank you again, listeners, for joining us and spending time to listen to Discover Barnstable, the official podcast of the Town of Barnstable. We hope that you found a new understanding of how your municipal government works to protect, engage, and enact for you and our community. Please be sure to drop us a line at podcast@town.barnstable.ma.us and let us know what you would like to learn next. Please do so. You're more than welcome to send us that line. So until next time, go discover Barnstable.